to review, so it should be a good meeting. We will start off with a roll call. Matthew Hertz, here. AJ Haney, here. Ennis Saba, KJ Garner. Present. Carrie Rogers couldn't make it tonight. Ennis just walked. Perfect. Courtney Ross. Here. John Norris. Here. And welcome to Chris Weinman. Here. All right, Ennis is here as well. All right, did everyone get a chance to review the minutes from last month's meeting? Yes. Any comments or edits?
Move that they be approved.
You turn your mic on.
Okay. I move that the minutes be approved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We can move on to public comment. I think we have 3 speakers signed up for tonight. We can welcome Julie Mattis first.
Oops.
Hi, I'm Julie Mattis, East Nashville bike commuter and frequent pedestrian all over the city. We've all been hearing a lot over the past couple of weeks about the pedestrian bridge possibly closing for construction at some point. The pedestrian bridge is a literal lifeline to countless adults and children. The mayor needs to keep his promise of Moreville, Las Vegas, and ensure that the bridge remains open at all times. Sometimes as a pedestrian and cyclist in the city, it's like the departments involved in determining our fate are that 3 Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. In this case, kind of passing the buck. Oh, that's they're responsible for that as far as who's in charge of ensuring one multimodal infrastructure or another. And that's when we really need the mayor to be a visible leader, emphasis on visible, pulling them all together and protecting Nashvillians and the multimodal folks who visit too. Thank you.
All right, next up is Charlie Weingartner.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Weingartner. I also quickly want to echo the comments that Kathy just said on the pedestrian bridge. I'm a member of the Vision Zero Advisory Committee, and just wanted to highlight today that last week another cyclist was killed in Nashville. Without diving too deeply into that specific incident, at the end, since it is the end of the year, I wanted to bring some Vision Zero statistics and information to this commission that might apply. Currently, year to date, overall, we're at 111 deaths in Davidson County on the roads this year. That includes 4 bicycles, 23 motorcycle deaths, 20 pedestrians, and 53 deaths in vehicles. Currently, year to date, we are just about on par with last year. We have an increase in cycling fatalities, a decrease in pedestrian fatalities, an increase in motorcycle and a decrease in vehicle. But also contrary, we have an increase in deaths on roads controlled by the state, a decrease in roads that are controlled locally. But if we go back even further, you can see that all of these fatalities and the statistics are noisy year to year. We're not seeing any discernible pattern. The pattern that we're looking to see here is a decline across the board, and we're not seeing that still. So I wanted to underscore that point and just bring that to your attention. Additionally, if you are interested in more of these details, I know your NDOT administrator can provide those for you, but we do keep an open public record of them on nashfatalcrash.com. I did also just add some really handy graphing tools and comparison tools where you can see pretty finite comparisons year over year. I did just get that published this morning. So if you have any further interest in that, please visit nashfatalcrash.com, or you can ask me any questions that you'd like after the meeting or any other time. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. And finally, Daniel Simpkins.
Hi, my name is Daniel Simpkins. I live in Inglewood, East Nashville. I'm a cyclist in our community. I helped start the Daniel's Bike Bus, which I know we had a couple other parents here a couple months ago, and some of the members of this room were extremely instrumental in helping us get more resources for figuring out best paths forward for our bike bus, which is seeing huge growth. But I'm here tonight. I also want to acknowledge, just like Charlie, the death of Blaze Schaefer last week on our roads, who was killed by a driver. And I hate that it takes yet another death of a cyclist, a pedestrian, to highlight the urgency of the things that we're talking about here tonight, that we're not talking about just infrastructure, but when we talk about that, we're talking about the thing behind that, which is people's lives and livelihoods. And I just hope that we can keep the focus on that as a city going forward, that it's easy to get caught up in the noise of the details of projects and everything, but like what we're talking about here is people's lives at stake and being able to enjoy their community and their city. And I want our streets to reflect that they're for the people of our city. One of the things I wanted to talk about, I know there's some talk about parking infractions, and specifically for me, focuses bike lane infractions is something I run into all the time riding through the roads of East Nashville. I had a pretty scary incident a couple months ago where I was taking a picture of a driver's license to report on Hub, and he tried to attack me and chase me down. I called the non-emergency number and reported it to Hub. I'm not sure what came of that. I think one of the things this shows is one of the potential problems of relying on citizens to report on Hub parking infractions, because it's yet another conflict point between cyclists or pedestrians and drivers. And additionally, there's a huge delay in the time when I actually report an issue and when an officer comes to see if a car is still there to give a ticket, and I'm assuming it usually doesn't lead to a parking ticket given. If there's any statistics on the percentage of Hub submissions for illegal parking that actually result in a ticket, I would love to see that. And additional question I have is if the city is using the data of where parking infractions occur to drive either infrastructure development or allocation of officer parking enforcement resources. Because in my opinion, if you just had parking enforcement on a loop between Riverside and Porter Road all day, the city could probably collect millions of dollars the whole year. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Sorry, it was a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we had our subcommittee meeting just prior to this meeting. We spent most of the time, I guess, with the rules process and reporting subcommittee talking about our annual report, which we'll review with you guys in a little bit. Courtney gave us we talked a little bit about community engagement and outreach, didn't have a full report from that subcommittee unless you have more to report, Courtney.
No, we can talk about this during that, during the annual report, but I'll focus on, or we will focus in the committee on, in January, of having some goals and what outreach we'll do in 2026 for our next meeting in January, along with possible budget.
Perfect, thank you. And then we still need to kind of revamp our planning and engineering subcommittee. We have a new member to welcome tonight, and hopefully we'll have another one in January. So I think with some new membership, we might be able to kind of get some new leadership for the subcommittee as well. All right, with that, we can move on to programmatic updates. And first up, we have an update on NDOT enforcement.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Emmanuel Matias. I'm one of the operations manager at NDOT. I'm part of the parking program, and the parking program in its form that is today has gone through some changes in the past 2.5 years. It started about 2.5 years ago, and I have a quick overview of where we started and where we have come as of today. So if you don't mind, I'll share a few of the slides with you, and then I'll be happy to answer any of the questions. So for history, the methods of payments have changed. Obviously, in the beginning, when the program launched in 2022, the legacy meters were installed. They are now replaced with multi-space meters. They are able to accept credit cards and cash. We also have QR codes that allow for payment through scanning the QR code, through sending a text message, or through visiting a web portal. That's a program that we use through our operator called LAS. The program itself is called LAS Go, and those will be the QR codes that are displayed. We have around 2,700 parking spaces today. Most of these have the QR codes, and so they allow for payment, again, electronically using a cell phone. The hours of operation are split into 2 districts. We have Central Parking District, which would be Sobro, Gulch, and Downtown, as we call it CPD. And then non-CPD or NCPD would be anything outside of the Sobro, Gulch, and Downtown area. So that would include Midtown, Hillsborough Village, any of those areas that would be enforced a different way because the CPD area is enforced 24/7. And the non-CPD area is enforced up until midnight, and then there's no enforcement between 12 and 6. And then at 6 a.m. it starts all over again. The rates are also different for CPD and non-CPD, with CPD being somewhat more expensive since it's encompasses downtown and the real estate is more, it's rarer. And so the paid parking zones currently are split between 7 zones. 3 of those are again in CPD, and the rest would be in non-CPD. The parking enforcement operates 24/7 based on these areas, and then everybody migrates from the non-CPD areas into downtown, and usually on Broadway or close to downtown core after midnight. We currently use technology using handheld devices and printers. We used to use handbooks the same way as MMPD. We changed that on September 9, 2024. Since then, we've issued around 49,000 citations. And we also have vehicles with LPR technology that is able to scan times, time limits. This would apply in time parking areas, and then also we are able to engage in establishing if somebody is paid or not through vehicles, which then are pushed into the handheld devices. The previous parking meter map is on the left. As you can see, we expanded quite a bit. Just creating those 7 zones made it so that previously the zones were larger, and it was sometimes the streets were so that if you would park on one street, you could not park on the other street, because they were the same zone. We try to make it a little more feasible. So currently, if you pay for, let's say, Zone 1, which is downtown, within a big chunk of downtown, you're still able to use that time and park at a different street using the allocated amount of money that you spent on that parking session. Again, it started around 1,600 parking spaces in 2022, and currently we are at 2,700. We've seen somewhat of a decline in spaces added because we've been focused on some other things such as valet, which has been not in good condition. That was one of my main focuses for the past couple of years. That has cleared up. And we've focused on multiple other things such as tows and helping MMPD as well with abandoned vehicles and illegal vehicles. But the space count overall is around 2,700. And just a quick stat, we have 170,000 vehicles that are transient in the city of Nashville every day. So if you would do a math, that's literally 1% that we provide for parking on the street. It's not a lot, but we try to expand to where it's reasonable and to where everybody's treated the same way. There are cities that are similar to our size that have parking in much higher numbers, in 10, 15% on street. Obviously, this doesn't cover the parking garages, and that only manages the on-street parking. But there's not a lot of parking spaces for the transient vehicles that come through the city. That's the bottom line. The benefits of parking, there's three main categories that we identified and wanted to present. One is air quality and emission. It's reduced vehicle emission, promoting alternative modes of transportation, healthy environment, reduced carbon emissions. You have social equity. There's TDM compliancy, reduced traffic congestion. You have people, if there's parking available, that means people are not circling around the block to find parking, which then reduces the emission and frustration. And also, of course, it has an impact on quality of life when it comes to the sound, noise ordinances, savings for parkers, on gas and time, and boost for the city, as I mentioned earlier, by promoting alternative modes of transportation such as biking or Vigo. So key achievements as far as the revenue. Quick note here also, all the revenues collected through the parking program are going into a special fund, and those are then used for improvement of infrastructure. That would be sidewalks, roads, anything that the department deems necessary. We have a comparison here presented to you for 2024 and 25 fiscal year. And the total revenue since the program has launched, which is 10.31 million. 4 million hours were purchased by the public through our system, and we had seen 2.2 million transactions. All of these numbers are a little bit higher now because this is for fiscal year which ended June 30th. So, but this is for the last fiscal year mostly, and 24. For the comparison, the top part, the right part shows the overall. And then for 2025, we have a lot of abandoned vehicles that have been addressed. That's 2,400 almost, 3,600 illegal vehicles, green tags, which would be the vehicles that are abandoned on the street that need to be removed and are allowed time to remove the vehicle. So we usually green sticker those before they are towed. We've done 1,740 tows last fiscal year, and we helped with 1,870 PD requests. And those would be the requests from PD coming through radio, asking for help, usually with illegal or abandoned parking. That includes bike lanes as well. Parking meter revenue, this is the split of the revenue. Obviously, parking meters is the majority of it. We have some revenue collected through the valet services that we offer. A residential parking program is $10 a year, so it doesn't yield too much, although we have around 83 streets that have RPPs. Bag meter revenue represents the revenue collected through the years for rental of spaces. And we do that for events, for buses, for somebody who needs to park near their business for whatever reason, or just stage their vehicle. And so the last one will be permits. And we haven't done too many vending, loading zone, or green permits in the last few years, so it has reduced, but we picked up revenue in other means throughout the program. This is the comparison on the fluctuation of the parking revenue month by month and compared to fiscal years 2024 and 2025. As you can see, the strong months usually are October and then May. And this is standard across multiple industries, but it also reflects in parking. This would be the amount of, this is the average daily transaction time and value. The spikes are representing the amount of hours purchased, and it seems to be that around 6 a.m. when people are going to work or getting back from work, depending on what they do, the hours are purchased, and the average hour is 4. We used to have, as of last year, April, the maximum amount of time was 3 hours. Currently, it's 10. And there's a half an hour cool-off period to start another session. These are across all of the districts, except that after midnight, there's no payment required in the non-CBD areas, because after midnight to 6, there's no payment required and no enforcement. Just some of the quick dashboard data also. 99.81% of payments are credit cards. Barely any payments are collected through coins. We still do collections. Our team does that monthly. And let me see if I can share something here that would be interesting. You could see the weekly transaction value year over year. It peaks at 22,000, and the lowest point is around 6,000. And around as far as the time goes, 6 a.m. again is when it starts to pick up. 12 p.m. for lunches is when it's really busy, and then 6 p.m. When dinner starts is when there's another spike, and then it kind of trickles down. This represents the entire Davidson County, so the numbers might be a little skewed because, again, after midnight, non-CPD areas do not see a lot of engagement with parking. Citations, year over year, there has been a significant increase, close to 50%. When I started a couple of years back, we had 11 NDOT officers on staff. We're currently at 40. So we have grown significantly. We have 3 leads that oversee our operations 24/7. We have 3 shifts, 7 to 3, 3 to midnight, and then 10 to 6 a.m. And since this represents the citations that mostly are due to this increase, represents the citations that were issued with the electronic system, which is a little more efficient than handwritten citations. And also the increase is due to the increase in staff on top of efficiency. Meter time expired is the number one violation. Expired registration is number 2. Parking in the tollway zone would be number 3. Parking in prohibited place, number 4. Parking on the wrong side of the street is number 5. And these numbers fluctuate month by month, year by year, depending on the season, events, and so on and so forth. We anticipate, currently we are at 39,000 for the year, and we are not even halfway through, so the citations are probably going to be probably closer to double to last year. And so what that means also is that that's only the situations where a citation was warranted. We have a lot of ambassadorship action that happens prior to that, and I would say every 3 to 5 times out of 5 engagements or 3 engagements, a citation is issued. So the engagement of NDOT enforcement officers is probably in the 200,000 per year. The citations don't really paint the whole picture of the compliance that we impose on the city and that we bring to the city. But obviously citations is something that can be tracked. Verbal interactions are a little harder to track, but they're our key component in engaging with the public. This speaks to the retired verdicts of the citations. So out of the 49,000 citations from last year, 13,000 were brought to court by public, and only 218 were dismissed. McDonald's has a worse success rate than NDOT enforcement. So does Starbucks, and we are on par with Amazon when it comes to accuracy of citations, which we're really proud of. Some of the largest cities, the best police departments have 1.5 to 4% failure rate. Last year we were at 0.8. This year we're right now at 1%, and we're tracking to be 0.8 as well. So that would mean for every 100 citations that our officers issue, 0.8 would be, for whatever reason, not good. And when I say not good, they could be still dismissed, and the officer could be correct in assessing the violation and citing. But these are the stats from the court, and I thought that would be a good idea to share. The 41,000 citations were issued in an electronic system. The difference between the 49 and 41 were the paper citations, since we launched in September. So since July till September last year, there was around 9,000 to 10,000 tickets issued on paper. We had 801 citations issued for residential parking RPPs, 569 for blocking the fire hydrant, 321 for sidewalk, 326 citations were issued for obstructing the bicycle lane. And I want to point out that NDOT enforcement officers address only standstill parking violations. Any moving violations would be MNPD. So if there's a vehicle parked in the bike lane, that would be us. If there's a vehicle moving, stopping and moving, that would be MNPD. We can only address a vehicle that is parked in a lane of traffic, in a public right-of-way, including the bike lanes. A bicycle lane citation, just split of the, and by the way, this number now is 450 as of today. We're working with, this is a data for last fiscal year, so the number that I showed you earlier, this 326 number is now higher, and that represents June to July of last year. The main streets, and the gentleman that spoke here earlier, I'll be glad to provide you my name and contact information. If you could share that with me, I'll gladly have somebody put that on their route or have more enforcement active in that area. Out of the citations that were issued last year, these were the top streets that saw violations in bike lanes. And again, citations do not paint the full picture, because there's a lot of engagement that happens. There's folks that see us, see the car arriving, and they leave. There are folks that we talk to and they leave. We educate them, we coach them, and then hopefully they don't do it again. And if they do, or if there's nobody to talk to, then a citation comes to place. There's really no negotiation. We actually created, I launched a safety hazard program a couple of months back. Bike lanes are part of those safety hazards. So if anybody is blocking a crosswalk, for us it's the same violation as if somebody's blocking the bike lane. So it's extremely high priority. It's the highest that we have at this point, and it is, again, equal to somebody blocking a crosswalk or an intersection. We put a lot of effort and a lot of emphasis on making sure the bike lanes are safe. I don't think these apply to you too much. These are the streets that we are planning on or presenting to be approved for paid parking. And lastly, we have our enforcement vehicles, which just got a new wrap. Very proud of this, designed it in 20 minutes. We have these now on all the 14 vehicles that we have as of last week. And so feel free to talk to us. If you see this vehicle, this means we are enforcing in your area. Again, we're happy to talk and enforce whatever you'd like us to, as long as it's within the parameters and within the confines of the law and the code that we use, 1240 parking. I'm ready to take any questions if you have any, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Hey, I've got a couple of questions for you. So how many metered spaces are there for bicycles, like secure bike locker storage in the public right-of-way?
That's a Brent question?
Well, I'm not talking about the corrals. I'm talking about like actual bike lockers. So it's $10 for a residential parking permit per year?
Yes, ma'am.
So I can store my private vehicle on public property for only $10 a year?
That's for motorized vehicles only.
Right. So where would the parking, situation be in terms of getting like actual secured bike parking? Secured being covered, locked, that sort of storage?
I don't know of any in the public right-of-way that would be on the curb.
Okay. And you don't know that there's any coming down the pike in any sort of planning?
No, but now that you say that, we can ask that question.
Fantastic. So it's a $10.31 million revenue for the program overall. Is that inclusive of fines, citations?
That includes, well, the fines is a tricky one. Any fine that is issued by NDOT, there's a split there's a court fee that is associated with it. It's $44, $45, $1 goes to the state. It is about to be increased by $6 since January 1st. So the parking citations really, and the majority of our citations are $70. If you do the difference between 44 and 70, it's 26. So the $26 is really what goes to the parking program,
The revenue?
the revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the fine for an obstruction of a bike lane or sidewalk or whatever would wind up being about $70 that the person is having to pay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I think,
76 as of January 1st.
okay, and then the statistics you had for parking in a prohibited place, that also includes bike lanes and sidewalks, it's sort of lumped
That-
together?
Yes, that includes fire hydrants, bus station, bike lanes, but we specifically have data in the command center, which is the system that we use on the back end. I can put in a keyword like bicycle because we have a specific code for that, and so I can narrow down either on a map by a heat map visually or just by the streets or the ticket citation itself, including pictures and anything else for bikes. So I can have that data separate always.
Okay, and then what is your ideal response time to hub requests like parking in a bike lane, obstructing a sidewalk? Ideally, how fast would you respond?
Ideally immediate. If we have somebody in the field, we usually dispatch based on the zip code or based on the area or the, forgive me, I'm losing the word, the zone, I'm sorry, the zone that we have somebody dispatched in. So if, let's say downtown, or if you have downtown core people, then the downtown core person would get either the car request or whatever else would come in as an obstruction of the bike lane. And so we obviously, that's just one part. Receiving a hub request is just one part. We are also actively looking at somebody being parked in a bike lane. I'm a father myself. I love bikes. The last thing I want is for somebody to, not pay attention or whatever happens and there's a vehicle parked in a bike lane and, there's an accident. So we actively look for those. And again, they are literally on top 5 of our list of what we enforce when we see.
Okay. And then getting back to that crazy cheap residential parking permit, that fee is determined by whom?
That's historically approved. I wasn't here when that came about.
Sure.
I don't think it makes any sense, right? Because it's $50 for 10 hours to park on a downtown street and $30 for a 10-hour session outside of downtown. It's completely outdated. We are working on a revision. It's been in the works, and hopefully I'll have something here next year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you. Great questions.
I do have a question. Along with that residential parking, what places would that include? Like what complexes have the residential parking program?
So the residential parking program is supposed to provide parking for motorized vehicles, i.e. cars, in areas where there are quality of life issues or parking issues. There are certain criteria they have to meet, and so there is certain standards that need to be met. And so that would be like if there's a tractor's really close to your street, and so you have a bar, and the bar is open until 3 a.m., and then you have influx of people coming and parking in your residential neighborhood, and then you can't find parking when you get home, or they block your driveway, or there's excessive noise, or trash, or crime is increased. So there are criteria that they have to meet. There's an application process for that. The engineers would go out and assess it. And there needs to be a 75% consensus within the range of the RPP proposal. So if, let's say, Street A is requesting RPP, 75% of the household on that street need to be in favor of the RPP for it to qualify. Then there's a certain amount of spaces that is allocated for that street, and it's not always the entirety of the street. It is first come, first serve. So having a permit doesn't mean that you have a parking spot. It means you are have an allocated spot that you are able to get if you get there first. But it's first come, first serve.
Okay, my next question then, in enforcement, is there a distinction between parking and standing, like the person in the vehicle?
Oh, that's a good question, sir. Yes. So if I have a taxi cab that stops, let me say it this way. If I have a taxi cab that is going down on Fifth Avenue towards Broadway and it's going slowly and stops every 2 seconds for the light to turn green so he can illegally get somebody on, that's standing because he would stand. I cannot really have and that officer going to approach me in the lane of traffic and give him a citation. If he's parked at the curb or in the loading zone or anywhere where it is safe, that would be parking. And then you could look into what does it mean if, if standing means somebody's in the car, parking might mean somebody's not in the car. But then you have parking when people just wait. So that would be standing. So it's, I don't really know if
Sounds
that's a
a little
good
gray,
answer, but
yeah.
it's convoluted. It's, we have officers that need to use logic and common sense to try to assert what is a good citation and what makes sense and what is an ambassador action needed and not.
Okay, I also heard you mention, you approaching the vehicles and them moving on and you maybe not being able to ticket them. Is the first priority maybe to educate and then the ticket, or is it that you're trying to get as many tickets as possible to increase those numbers?
Great question. The answer is ambassadorship is number one, always. Citation is something that we must do, not want to do. And we don't have quotas for citations. There's no incentives for somebody to write 20 or 30. It doesn't exist. So it just, all I'm asking my team is that if you see a violation, don't ignore it. Whatever that means on that specific day for that officer, it varies, but educate, explain why it's a violation, explain how they can do better, why they should do better, what effect it has on everybody else, and then if they don't comply or don't care, then cite.
And are your officers, I guess, prepared for an escalation in the driver's attitude about being written a citation? That could be a heated situation. Is that something that might determine if they get a ticket or how they handle it?
It shouldn't. We are human beings, not robots at this point. I'm sure it's coming at some point soon, but we still assert as much as, human interaction as possible. Sometimes there's no other way but cite because they just refuse to leave. Sometimes we have to call PD for support. It just really depends case by case. But we are humans. We try to make it. We understand that stuff happens. We understand you sometimes don't know that you're doing something illegal. And we also understand if you repeat violator, and we talk 5 times already. So it's a different approach.
All right, last question. Is there a program to boot any tires, to put something on there so they physically can't move the cars like they do in other cities?
We are working on a scofflaw right now. We've talked about barnacles, which is a device that you can put on the windshield that they use in New York that will allow to only be removed once payment is received for the violation, or towing. So we are currently determining what will be the best option. We have currently the command center that I mentioned earlier, the system that gathers all the electronic citations that we've issued so far. We've already implemented a scofflaw counter. So we are aware of which violators have more than 3 citations, for example, that would mark it as scofflaw. And now we are deciding what to do with those, whether it probably be towing, because if you put a boot on a vehicle, that just means you have a vehicle that is on the street right now, and they might need to not be able to pay if they have 107 tickets. So, you got it.
How many scofflaws do you have?
How many scofflaws do we have? Like how many, the count? 300, I believe. It's up there. We have, and they vary. Again, some of them have 3. I just heard about one that had 107. That's why I mentioned it earlier. So, it's it's a problem.
Okay, then that makes me think, what about people who may have housing disparities and are living in their car? Would those people, Or have you run into that situation, and how would you handle that?
We have, and PD helps with those.
Who decides how much to charge for parking and what factors are considered?
That's legislature, and I don't know how it starts, but right, if you look at, I can give you the data on the current one. It went through readings and it got approved.
Metro Council?
Metro
Okay.
Council, yeah.
Okay.
Not from NDOT, it doesn't come from NDOT.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I loved all the data that you had, Emmanuel, really good stuff. I think I heard you mention that the proceeds, the funds, go to, I think the word you used was a special fund. Was that right?
Yes, sir.
And I think you alluded to sidewalks. Is there something more clear, or is there something where the public can see, or we can see, like, how those funds are actually given back towards infrastructure or other initiatives by NDOT?
I think the answer is yes. I just don't have that information. It's above my pay grade, but I'm sure if a public record is placed, we can present it. Or if we run it through appropriate channels, possibly something could be presented. Unfortunately, I don't have that data. I'm sorry.
Thanks, just a couple quick questions. Are the data you presented about the locations of bike lane obstructions publicly available anywhere?
No, I don't see a problem with them being though. So if that's something that you would like, I can look into it.
I think it'd be really helpful. That's the
agree.
first time I've actually seen like a map of like where the most common violations are.
I
think
agree.
That'd be really awesome to have.
No problem.
Yeah,
We
thanks.
can make that happen.
And then are those data like ever reviewed with NDOT to say like people park in this bike lane every day, we've issued 100 tickets and nothing has happened? Could that be a spot for like an infrastructure improvement? Is that a
That
conversation that
alludes
has?
to the point that the gentleman mentioned. I think it's a great point. We do review those. Because we launched in September of 2024 and we are, almost just over a year new, we have reviewed them. I just don't know if we got to the point where we said, okay, we got to change something now on this street. So I think that will be the step upcoming now. With all the other changes and the growing of the bike lanes, I think it's time to, now that we have the data and we can showcase it on map and heat maps,
Yeah, it's
I
great
think
data.
it's a great idea to start using that as a tool to improve.
Yeah, and then is there a way to figure out, like, I think was mentioned earlier, is like the percentage of hub requests that actually result in like a response and a citation or like talking to a driver?
We have a manager who deals with hub specifically. That might need to be something that she looks into. I know that I have 3 different categories for hub. That would be open, that would be overdue, and that would be closed. So I would be able to provide the data on closed, I would be able to provide the data on overdue, but I just don't know what the percentages are. And I can say that just proudly, our open requests every day, because they come in every day, are in single digits. So nothing is in overdue. If something is in overdue, it's probably an abandoned vehicle, which we have 10 days to address. So we've been keeping them down under 10 every single day for almost a year now. So doing a good job there.
And last question. I know there are times where a driver will park like on top of flex posts. They're supposed to be protecting a bike lane and will destroy them. Are there fines for drivers that destroy infrastructure above that parking violation? And how would that be addressed? I think there was actually a case recently in Inglewood where an individual was going out and like destroying flex posts as well. But we see, they're down all over the city because a car has parked on top of them and broken them.
That's a great question. I don't think it falls under the parking violation. I think it falls under property damage. I think that might be a different department, but we can look into this. I'm making mental notes of everything you guys. You guys are awesome. I'm making mental notes of everything you said. I'll bring it up with the team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was
as well.
great.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Michael Briggs with an update on the East Bank.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me. I realize this is unusual since I'm with the mayor's office and providing an update on the East Bank Boulevard design process. So you all have sent several questions that I think by going through this update will help answer the direction that we're headed on both the boulevard and then how it relates to Choose How You Move, because connecting these components on the East Bank that then connect into the all-access corridors with Choose How You Move is a really critical step moving forward. Just a reminder that during Mayor O'Connell's campaign, oh, and sorry, I forgot to mention, so I am the Deputy Chief Program Officer for the Choose How You Move program in the mayor's office. So sorry for leaving that off. But during his campaign, he committed to taking plans to reality. And as part of that commitment, if you know my history, I was brought back to work in Metro government to move forward the transit referendum last year. And that was based on the over 70 plans and 66,000 pieces of input that many Nashvillians had really invested their time and energy in to develop over the last 10 to 20 years. That resulted in the Choose How You Move program being adopted by voters last year, and that really helps us fund essential transportation infrastructure, such as smart traffic signals, sidewalks that are long needed throughout the city, and also upgrading streets that are really slated for major bus service upgrades over the coming years. So the key component of the CHIME program is the all-access corridor network that identified 54 miles of improvements. And the East Bank Boulevard forms the backbone of that network then on the East Bank. And so what I'm going to do is walk through our aligned approach between the different entities that you see on the screen, because it's not just something that the Development Authority is responsible for delivering, but they're delivering infrastructure on behalf of Metro-wide different departments and agencies that are all needing to be coordinated around this same vision. So I need to emphasize a few points. The departments, the Metro agencies are all aligned in delivering the community's vision for East Bank and multimodal connectivity and how those pieces come together on the East Bank. The boulevard is a transit spine that connects significant elements of our transit network. And so transit service is something that is involved and ingrained in all design scenarios and will be included on the East Bank Boulevard. Because the boulevard connects these critical transit elements, our collaborative approach that we're using with Choose How You Move will be a model to evaluate the street design by context. So this is a sort of a new muscle or new concept for us to introduce as a city, beginning to look at the design of corridors block by block. We're prepared to work together, not only with you all, but we've given a similar update with several advocate organizations that we're working on a redesign of the boulevard. And also, we're prepared to work with others in the community on mobility and provide updates as we adjust to decisions that are still evolving around the East Bank and Choose How You Move. And then finally, there's no final decision on the boulevard cross-section that's been made to date. This just captures a little bit of what we've heard, and I won't go into each of those in tons of detail, but just reiterates what we've heard. We've begun to process and align, and then making sure we're delivering the community vision for the East Bank. There were concerns around transparency and some of the design options, and really a lot about reiterating the importance of safe walking, biking infrastructure, placemaking as we're working through the boulevard design. Something that came up that was unexpected to us was a shift of transit off the boulevard, and I think we want to continue to reiterate that we envision transit being on the boulevard moving forward. So the Imagine East Bank plan, so this is one of those many plans that the Choose How You Move program built upon. It included the Imagine East Bank vision plan. That had over 50 meetings done in over nearly 2 years The transportation network built out on Federal Highway Administration and National Association of City Transportation Official design guidance. And it really reflected our city's commitment to complete streets implementation and our Vision Zero action plan. The Major and Collector Street Plan and the East Bank Mobility Plan functioned as the framework during those discussions from the Imagine East Bank Vision Plan. And really goals from the plan centered around safe and simple multimodal connections, including comprehensive sidewalks, connected greenways, and a robust biking network and dedicated transit facilities. So here's some of the highlights that come from the East Bank Vision Plan. 9.4 miles of dedicated bike facilities is to include the city's first bus rapid transit corridor as part of the East Bank Boulevard, 20 miles of new and widened sidewalks, and 1.7 miles of greenways. And this shows you how all of that connects in the vision plan. So how we're taking plans to reality is that Choose How You Move built upon the Imagine East Bank and Connect Downtown plans to outline a backbone of dedicated transit lanes on the East Bank that then also connect to the all-access corridors. You'll also see the star in the middle as a multimodal hub. That is an East Bank Transit Center that's also included in the Choose How You Move program. And so each of these studies and ultimately the referendum had a significant number of touch points that led to 66% of voters deciding to invest in ourselves and delivering in the Choose How You Move program. So the transit vision that's outlined in these plans and the voter-backed referendum includes scenarios that involve transit lanes being on the East Bank Boulevard. So then moving into the Choose How You Move program and how that looks like for the all-access corridors. That transportation improvement program document outlined how the all-access corridor components connect. And so there's a map on the left that shows you the all-access corridors and how those traverse throughout parts of the county. And then the map on the right, which is a zoomed-in version of the all-access corridors showing the bus stop improvements and signalized intersection upgrades that are also planned. So you'll note how the East Bank Boulevard connects between James Robertson Parkway, linking Dickerson and Gallatin Pikes, and forming the loop of the downtown core of the all-access corridors. So that's the line that's in the green that sort of snakes through the East Bank and connects over via James Robertson and the KVB bridge. So what I'd like to do is walk you through the collaborative design process and what that looks like for Choose How You Move and how that parallels a similar design process on the East Bank Boulevard. So one of the first critical things that we need to do in both instances is have critical agreements that are executed with the state or with TDOT in many instances. So the Choose How You Move program leverages federal funds in order to deliver the full vision of the program. And it follows a rigorous capital investment grant program process. You have to follow certain steps in order to leverage that federal money. This was a significant step for us to achieve and that we needed to have dedicated funding in order to compete with other peer cities to really even have a chance in a CIG program application. Similarly, the East Bank Boulevard has a very structured process. It also includes a NEPA that preserves our ability to secure future grant funds. So even though those grant funding programs haven't been identified at the moment for the East Bank Boulevard, it is important that we go through that process step by step in order to secure grant funding. Also, Choose How You Move funding, because it was identified in the program, can be leveraged for the East Bank Boulevard. State approval for Choose How You Move is required on the dedicated BRT lanes. That's something that is embedded in state law, and it is something that we will have to address as we continue to implement work on the all-access corridors to do bus rapid transit. Similarly, a state partnership is really critical to many of the key East Bank elements. So when you think of the stadium or TPAC, some of the other street connections, the state, even though this is not a state-owned street, is a critical partner in helping us deliver the vision for East Bank Boulevard. And then for Choose How You Move, 89% of our all-access corridor mileage. So of those 54 miles, about 48 to 49 miles of the all-access corridors are state-owned routes. And so we have to have a really good working partnership with the state, achieving mutual outcomes between TDOT and Metro moving forward. And as I mentioned, the East Bank Boulevard is not a TDOT route, but key street connections are TDOT. So connecting to James Robertson Parkway, some of the interstate interchanges are also key components with state oversight. So the working relationship and agreements with the state is a critical step in this collaborative process. And so the next step is aligning on some of the connective pieces and some of the parallel improvements. So with Choose How You Move, the East Bank Boulevard, as I mentioned, is a part of the all-access corridors. It connects Main and Gallatin and Dickerson. Same thing out of the vision plan for East Bank Boulevard, connecting Main, Gallatin, and Dickerson Pikes. The East Bank Transit Center is identified, both in Choose How You Move and with the East Bank Boulevard. And then finally, all access corridors will include a study of parallel streets. So really looking at comprehensive multimodal networks, not just upgrades on the street itself, but how we do things block by block, moving all pieces of transportation or all transportation modes in that area will be critical to look at opportunities on parallel and side streets as well. Similarly, the Imagine East Bank plan included a network of parallel streets for multimodal improvements. So, state partnership, aligning on connective pieces. The third part of this in terms of the process is a nuanced approach. So it's looking at things block by block, context, really looking at the data. It helps enable flexible improvements. And so with Choose How You Move, the street designs must be a partnership with the state to deliver community vision that we have set out based on the Choose How You Move outcomes. With the East Bank Boulevard, the street design connects to some of the East Bank elements, and that has a significant state partnership in delivering the vision. The street designs, as I mentioned, will vary block by block, responding to some of the infrastructure in Choose How You Move. There's an existing neighborhood fabric and building fabric that we have to design the roadway within, and there's narrow right-of-way. So there's a limited amount of space in terms of what we can fully do on some of the corridors. With East Bank Boulevard, it's a little bit different in that the street design would still vary section by section or kind of phase by phase, but is responding to planned developments and data to inform the right-of-way. So as we find out more information as to some of the developments that are coming online, that impacts how we design the street. Then finally, a context approach that's really rooted in continuous improvement will deliver high-quality streets over time and Choose How You Move. And I'll talk a bit about what continuous improvement means here in just a minute. And a phased approach with the East Bank Boulevard with some of that flexibility will deliver a high-quality boulevard over time. So what does continuous improvement look like in Nashville? So this is an example of what a context approach involving continuous improvement might look like on an all-access corridor. This can be similar to the East Bank Boulevard. But for all access corridors, we have existing streets that were built to move traffic at highway speeds and oftentimes no sidewalks. And these now serve as the backbone for frequent transit in Nashville. And so this is what we're really trying to solve and improve on many of these corridors. As the context changes, the street can change. And or we see interim improvements, so maybe more midterm enhancements that are done over time before we get to some of the major infrastructure upgrades. And so these are just some of the examples of what scaled improvements might look like. And so our data, the modeling, community conversations will really pick up that moment in time. And we'll evaluate changes based on context and what is envisioned in the future over time. And so the result is a higher quality street that even smaller improvements begin to deliver, but it sets up a conversation around design flexibility as we get into the final capital project. So these design steps and interim improvements are ultimately setting the stage really for final build out. This results in significant basic street infrastructure that supports how we move on these corridors. So this is where we get into having the smart signalized intersections that are connected, helping buses and traffic move at reliable and safe speeds, sidewalks being constructed on the corridors with safer crossings, and combinations of transit lanes and technology that give us reliable and frequent transit service that eventually operates 24/7 on the all-access corridors. Finally, one of the most important things that we need to keep in mind is that we have to continue to operate, maintain, and improve this infrastructure. So we have not had the resources. We've been in a scarcity mindset in Nashville to upgrade a lot of these streets to really meet our modern needs. We've had a lot of changes on these streets over the last 20 years. And so Choose How You Move keeps that funding going to help us improve and maintain that infrastructure over time. And so what we propose doing is right-sizing phases. So looking at, for example, on the East Bank Boulevard, what section are we talking about? How is it connected to access in some of the surrounding properties? What are we moving through that particular corridor, and how does it connect to adjacent streets? So it's beginning to look at it in phases or segments that are outlined on the screen, and really diving into some of the modeling work, because there's been a lot of changes just since some of the early meetings were held last summer on some of the planned developments. So working with the East Bank team, this is what a projected timeline looks like for East Bank Boulevard. Wanted to put this all out here so there's an understanding of how long it will take to do the boulevard itself. I'm not going to get into every stage of this, but what I want to also put up then is how the transportation network begins to be built out on the East Bank. So there's a lot of other components that begin to come online and connect before the boulevard even begins construction. There's still some things that are unknown on the timing of this, so just keep in mind that this timeline is subject to change. And then I want to add in, we have to start connecting the other components with the all access corridors and Choose How You Move. So that work begins and starts being carried out. And so this is a level of investment that Nashville has not seen before. And so it's taken us a bit of time as folks have come on both at the East Bank Development Authority as staff and with the Choose How You Move program to begin aligning all of these pieces together to deliver a cohesive vision between the different agencies. So just to reiterate on next steps, we have more work to do with you before final decisions are done involving the street design elements. So you're likely to see us back here and in other settings as we get closer to summer, talking through some of the data modeling that will look at those different portions of the boulevard. We'll be using a collaborative process that is inspired by the Choose How You Move program and some of the work around the all access corridors that will evaluate that context really block by block in some instances, and then keeping in mind that we have some short and midterm improvements that can be done that will then deliver on longer term vision. And there could be flexibility built in as to how some of these corridors come together over time. And then finally, we want to keep the door open for grant funding for opportunities to construct the East Bank Boulevard. So similar to how Choose How You Move is leveraging federal funding, we want to be sure that the process follows a rigorous steps in order to keep that grant funding open. So with that, I'll stop, and I'm happy to take questions. And Derek left. So I was actually going to say Derek's also here from NDOT, but we have folks from NDOT too. So if we don't have the answers today, we can also get back with you all as a committee at a future time.
Can you give me like a 2 or 3 sentence definition of what you're terming to be an all access corridor?
Sure. So we've talked about the Choose How You Move program in 4 areas: sidewalks, signals, service, and safety. So the all-access corridors are really doing all 4 of those things. So when you look at the pikes, which is oftentimes what the all-access corridors are, there's gaps in sidewalks, there's signals that aren't connected, there's transit service that's running frequently on it today that is stuck in the same traffic as everyone else. And then there's all of the safety improvements that I think we are all aware of on the pikes with pedestrians. And so it's doing all of those things. And so it's going to be, the design will be different per corridor. And a good example of this is comparing some of the conditions on West End Avenue today to Dickerson Pike. So West End has a pretty decent sidewalk through there. And so the all-access corridor design for that may be more focused on looking at the lanes and how to get transit being really reliable, upgrading the signals, and making sure crossings are really safe. Compare that to Dickerson Road, which has really deficient infrastructure in many levels. So it's not just some of the unsafe conditions with pedestrians. There's major stormwater issues just with a regular rainfall. And in that instance on Dickerson Road, you're likely talking about the whole street being rebuilt from curb to curb or from sidewalk to sidewalk, because sidewalks are needing to be put in. Some of the stormwater infrastructure needs to be put in for the first time. There's some access management that has to be done through there. Signals being upgraded. So it's kind of a more context appropriate deployment of infrastructure improvements based on sort of the existing conditions that are there.
Okay, and mentioning Dickerson Road, so that's signed as a bike route currently. Are there any plans for bicycle facilities on that road or on any of the all-access corridors?
Yes, so that would be something we would work through during the planning process for the corridors. So one of the things that I've had kind of a side conversation with Catherine as well is just the design trade-offs of what we're trying to achieve on some of the corridors and then what we can do on parallel streets. Some of them, like if you look in Nolensville and the Woodbine area, have really constrained right-of-way. And so there may be, through that community process, that we figure out how we prioritize transit through there, and then also figure out what the bikeway facility looks like. So we'll be looking at all of the modes, but we cannot at this point guarantee every segment of all access corridors have every single component. And so that's why looking at this in terms of a network, like you have the main corridor, but looking at it in terms of the parallel streets and the network will be key on each of the all access corridors.
Is there any reason protected bike lanes can't be included on East Bank Boulevard?
I think that's what we'll continue exploring with you all as to what that looks like. Because we're wanting to revisit the need related to the travel lanes and do some updated modeling based on those different phases that were presented and be able to report back to you all as to what we see in terms of the modeling and what the design options are related to flexibility.
Just seems that if it's going to be a multimodal roadway, it should include bike lanes and preferably protected bike lanes.
Yep, I hear you, and it also depends, I think, on what segment of the boulevard we're talking about, because as we've continued to have conversations and get aligned, that's been a little bit unclear both internally and then also externally as to what segments we're all talking about. So.
Curious, Michael, not to get into all the details as you cleverly suggested we shouldn't in the interest of time, but with the actual construction of the boulevard, I think your slide said that construction was starting, I think it was 34. Am I reading this? Or maybe 31?
So 2030 for the boulevard itself.
Right, correct,
Yeah,
yes.
so it's the beginning of kind of the darker line there.
Sure. And it's going to, for obvious reasons, it'll take a few years to construct it. Is there a reason why, again, I'm very naive, so I'll preface that, but Is there a reason why it's a, 4 to 5 year kind of engineering process to get that started versus, since that's kind of like the focal point, the main artery in this new neighborhood, could that be moved up any further?
Yeah, and I'm probably, again, not the best one to put all the pieces together, but my understanding and talking with Development Authority staff is there's issues. So right now, there's 2 stadiums that are there. One opens up, another one comes down. So until the old one comes down, there's really not work for the boulevard to begin at that point. So I think that's kind of the main sticking point. I think there's other issues like involving the Greenway, 2nd Street, where there's active construction right now as to why that is able to be delivered sooner.
All right, I've got some questions and I have just a few comments as well. Going back to the timeline for a second, do you have a timeline for the Greenway to be completed? I wasn't sure what, the River North Greenway is a section of it, but as far as like the first map, you showed they had the Greenway going kind of all the way to Davidson Street. Do we have a timeline for that to be completed?
I don't have that, but that's something we can follow up with you.
And then I think it was discussion about like parallel routing, which we've talked about, but, I have concerns about, kind of diverting bicyclists off main corridors, which is where the businesses and the destinations are, and telling them to take, other routes that aren't truly parallel. And I think in this situation, it's, the boulevard has been posed as the central destination, as the central corridor in this neighborhood, with other north-south connections for people on bicycles being 2nd Avenue, which we know is going to be closed for all events, and in this Greenway by the river, which, again, there's no clear timeline to complete. So I'm just concerned that if we do not have bike facilities on the boulevard, what is our north-south connection that we're able to access?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and that's something we can continue to raise as kind of these pieces come together, like how does safe connectivity work while construction's underway?
Yeah. And I know you said that new, I think, traffic analyses are going to be conducted. Do you know when those will be completed and when they might be available for us to review?
So we're hoping in early spring to have some stuff to share back that we can then talk through in meetings.
Great. I know there have been a lot of numbers of car trips that have been thrown around. I think I've seen anywhere from like 80,000 to like 200,000 in this neighborhood, and that's pretty astronomical. Are we imagining like this many cars going to this neighborhood every day? Like, are we providing parking for that many cars in this neighborhood, or is this going to be a place for people to kind of drive through?
Yeah, so this might be a good slide to put up, and it's probably not the best in terms of showing the connecting streets. But what I can walk you through in terms of what we know to this point. So close to where it has phase 1, that is that would be to the left end, but it's north on a map. So sorry, it's oriented differently. But left on this map would be the Oracle site development. So that is actually coming in lower than what it would be entitled to do based on the urban design overlay in terms of, and I say lower, it's not as densely developed as first envisioned. So that deviates a little bit from what the initial look on the boulevard had envisioned. If you look in the area with section 2, there's connections that need to be made over to Dickerson Pike, where TDOT is a critical partner in. So it's traversing through some of the interchange, and then also trying to make that connection. That was 2 options that were shown in the Imagine East Bank plan. There was one kind of closer in the 1 phase and then one in the 2nd phase. When you look at the 3rd phase, that's still, I think there's a lot of stuff to be figured out in that area. But then on the 4th phase there, you have the stadium coming together with events. You also have the TPAC agreement And then just off from where 4 ends, you have the scrapyard development that's been announced. And so we have a lot more details on that as well. And so we would want to put all of that new information into the model to kind of look at segment by segment or phase by phase what this could look like.
Thanks. And in addition to the traffic analyses, will safety analyses also be conducted, and what's the timeline for those?
So I definitely hear that concern. I think we'll have to maybe think through like what that safety analysis looks like on some of the segments where there is no street today. But there are significant intersecting roads that are pretty wide. And so I think we should be using some of the historical crash data analysis to inform the design through there.
And then I know.
And I'll just add, we'll continue to explore best practices for this. It is a little unusual for us to be able to build kind of a new street in an urban setting in Nashville. And so we'll be looking for best practices around the safety issue.
Yeah, and as part of that, I'm just curious, like, what consultants are involved in this process? Like, are there multimodal planners that are on the team that are like designing this boulevard right now?
I don't know the full breadth of the consultant team. My understanding is, and I'm sorry if I blank on some of the names in terms of the firms, because it's like alphabet soup. HDR is involved as the program manager for a lot of the East Bank components. They have experience doing multimodal work. I think modeling, I'd have to look into. I don't know if Birch did a version of some of the modeling work initially, but I think they may be a sub on that program management team. And then I believe AECom is also involved, related to some of the processes for the boulevard. And if I've left someone off, it is not meant by any means a slight to anyone. It's just, I may not be aware of the full team there.
Thanks, Michael. Just a couple more questions.
Okay.
I know there was the public meeting and survey this past April that a lot of people participated in. Have you reviewed those results, and do you know if those are going to be released to the public?
I have not reviewed them, but we can ask about that.
Okay, I think it'd be beneficial for everybody to be able to take a look at those. It was a pretty significant process with a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
And that should be taken into account while we're designing this as well.
Yes.
And then finally, can you just confirm what the current status of the NEPA application is? Has anything been submitted, and if so, what has been submitted?
Yeah, so nothing has been formally submitted for the NEPA process.
Okay.
So we're still in the middle of that. And I think that's where there was confusion, because there was a public engagement session, a lot of questions that then came in, and then kind of got wrapped into the ramp up of both East Bank Development Authority staffing and Choose How You Move staffing. And so I think as we have continued to see the feedback, we've been aligning internally as to what section people are talking about and trying to ensure we're all on the same page. And so this is kind of our renewed approach going forward together, is to re-examine the modeling based on that feedback.
Thank you.
What role, if any, will Metro Parks play concerning the greenways in the East Bank?
So I don't want to completely speak for them, but my understanding is they would play a significant role in ensuring the greenway itself is maintained and operated over time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. I just have some general comments as well. You can sit down.
Okay.
Thanks again, Michael, just for coming and being willing to talk to us. This is the first time we've gotten to talk about this since over, I think, a year ago, when Bob Mendez came to speak to us. I just kind of wanted to just kind of lay out some guiding principles for all of us to sort of keep in mind through this process. Michael, I know that you get this and that the mayor gets this, but I think just for the benefit of like the broader team working on this development and for everyone listening, I just want to make sure that we're starting from a place of common understanding. I think it's first important to emphasize what an incredible opportunity this is. Most cities never get the chance to build a neighborhood from the ground up. And the fact that they're ready to do that and that it's aligning with this massive opportunity that we have with Choose How You Move, it's really extraordinary. So I think this is where a lot of the excitement came from in the Imagine East Bank vision process. I think people really see the East Bank as a chance to truly build out a neighborhood that embodies our priorities without any constraints from existing infrastructure. This is like the one place in Nashville where we don't have to retrofit a street that's already dangerous and try to claw back space from cars to carve out space for people. So the like iterative process that you described here, I think makes sense for existing streets, but it doesn't really make sense where we're starting with a blank canvas, like with East Bank Boulevard. And I think we all know that once you give space to car traffic, it's really hard to get that back. So I think getting this right from the beginning is really important. So I would just first say, let's make sure we don't lose sight of this opportunity that we have because it's huge, and make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that have made our streets right now so dangerous and inaccessible. I think the second thing that I've just been thinking a lot about through this process is that you get what you build for. How we design our streets determines how people use them, not the other way around. I think people drive in Nashville because we've made it so hard and so unsafe to do anything else. But when you talk to people, they don't want to have to drive everywhere. They want to have options. And so in every public engagement process this comes up, in every meeting, every survey, people say they want priority for walking, biking, and transit over driving. But our infrastructure continues to basically do the opposite of that. It should be easier to take a bus or ride a bike than it is to drive in the East Bank as well as in all of Nashville. And this is not a radical concept. We have a modal hierarchy that is very prominently featured in every planning study that we do, but I've really yet to see a single instance of this actually being implemented in practice. I know that a lot of the kind of the trip generation and traffic modeling is in process, but I also just want to kind of call attention to the circular logic of using existing numbers of car trips to project a certain number of car trips and then build a street to accommodate that number of car trips, which really kind of perpetuates this vicious cycle that we're in of forcing people to drive because our streets are too dangerous to use other modes and then complaining about traffic. So I would just kind of ask the East Bank team in general to take these trip projection numbers with a grain of salt and to weigh objective safety data more highly than estimated traffic volumes and mode splits. Again, the way that we design this street is going to determine how safe it is and how people use it. And then I also think we need to remember that more lanes don't fix traffic, they make it worse. We know that building more lanes for cars and inducing demand for driving will just lead to more traffic, more injuries, and more fatalities. If you want to reduce traffic, you have to make it easy and safe for people to use other modes. We know that bus lanes and bike lanes move more people than car lanes. And again, I know everyone in this room understands this, but we have heard false statements repeated throughout this process that have been really frustrating. Things like bike lanes and bus lanes cause gridlock, or that bike lanes and bus lanes can't exist on the same street, and even that bike lanes make more streets more dangerous for pedestrians. I think we know these are patently false, and I think it's important to call out these fallacies when they come up and make sure that we are all starting from a place of common understanding and facts going forward. And then finally, just emphasizing the importance of listening to the people of Nashville. I know there are a lot of pressures from a lot of other entities involved in this development, but the people have been very clear about what they want here. People don't want another neighborhood where they have to drive. They want a neighborhood where it's safe to walk, bike, take transit, visit shops, and go to events without having to worry about parking and traffic and risking their lives to cross the street. Nashvillians voted for this administration. We voted for Choose How You Move because people want to change. And I think the most exciting thing about the East Bank is that we get to decide our own future here. And this should really reflect the priorities that people have communicated. So I would ask you, Michael, and the East Bank team and everybody involved in this just to go back and read the comments from that meeting and survey, release them to the public so everybody can read them. There are really some brilliant comments in there that I think we should be listening to. I think the people's voices should be the ones that are guiding this process, and so I don't want to lose sight of that. That's all I had for now, but thank you, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with you as this process moves forward. Thank you. All right, thank you. With that, I think we can move on to our annual report, which ties in nicely. All right, so we discussed our annual report during subcommittee just prior to this meeting. I think most of you guys were there and were able to review it thus far. I'll just kind of go through the highlights, and then we'll finalize it and make sure this is accessible on our website and sent out to all of the appropriate recipients as well. So we kind of went through initially kind of our goals as a commission in 2025 were basically to kind of increase our public accessibility and engagement, to strengthen collaborations with other Metro departments and other commissions, and then to kind of formalize our internal processes to be able to provide more tangible input on designs and policies to make our city more walkable and bikeable. So we kind of highlighted our accomplishments in each of these areas, also provided a summary of the resolutions and statements that we have passed this year. The next part were some data on the miles of sidewalk and bikeway that were built this year. Overall in 2025, we built 5.9 miles of sidewalk and 2.1 miles of bikeway. This is a slight increase in sidewalk construction compared to 3.8 miles back in 2024. A pretty noticeable decrease in bikeway construction, down from 21.4 miles. Also noting that we removed 0.15 miles of bikeway this year as well. We also looked at the bikeways constructed by type. Most of them were separated by flexible delineators, and we did not build any miles of concrete protected bikeways this year. Building off of this, we provided several recommendations for the city for next year. A lot of these recommendations, again, kind of center around taking advantage of the opportunity that we have through Choose How You Move with this injection of funding, which should allow us to really dramatically accelerate our sidewalk and bikeway construction. I think we can all agree that what we did this year was not enough, and also was not really providing high-quality protected infrastructure that is going to change the way people actually get around. So we put forth a few kind of specific infrastructure recommendations, and then also just emphasized really the importance of transparency of decision-making as these projects move forward, and identified specific time points in which BPAC should be consulted on all new projects. I can go through kind of what we talked about in subcommittee, but I guess I'll stop there if people have other thoughts or additions or edits.
Catherine, I had some thoughts that I didn't have during the subcommittee while people were talking. And I can send this, but under major goals, maybe, do you think it would be worth adding like the number of meetings we had? I know in our bylaws it states we have to have a certain number. I don't know if we need to report that so that, you know, that's transparent. We met monthly. I don't know if we want to add, we had 12 meetings.
Sure.
And then that kind of cascaded my thought process of how many members of the public did we hear from? I think just those numbers are helpful, as well as number of presentations, because we had some really good presentations and members of the public bringing up some really good points. And so I know we do a sign-up sheet for that, so maybe that's trackable. Just think numbers are important, and then something we could, you know, benchmark ourselves on if not. And so those were little bitty things, and then maybe add that we adopted a logo.
Yes,
We can add
thank
that.
you.
And then finally, I know we did this report at the end of the calendar year last year. Are we required to do it at the end of the calendar year, or is it the fiscal year I mean, I know we're doing it on the calendar, but should we, I just wonder if some of the data points are, someone was talking and the numbers about the parking were, Metro numbers are tied to the fiscal year. So I wonder if we need to do our report and going forward in July. Or is there a
That's a good
requirement to
question.
do it at the end of the calendar year? We all think calendar year, but Metro doesn't.
Yeah, I'll have to look back at our ordinance
Yeah,
and
we'll
see how
have to
that was
look.
worded.
Because maybe everyone does at the end of the calendar year, I just don't know. Something to think about, just as we look at the data points, because those numbers that we're getting from Metro are usually June 30 numbers.
True.
So that might save us some headache and some stuff, so that's all. Great job on the report, Chair.
Yeah, other things we discussed in subcommittee in terms of edits, there was just some kind of general organizational and wording changes. There was also a request to add in the miles of greenway built in addition to the bikeways and sidewalks, which I thought was a good suggestion. We will also add in the numbers of bicyclists and pedestrian fatalities this year. We talked about the bikeway citations, but kind of talking about like how putting these in context of total numbers of citations or the total number of hub requests, some way to kind of quantify that number that we showed in the report. And we also talked about adding in a specific request for a budget, which Courtney's going to help us with, that could help us to support some of our engagement and outreach activities.
Do we want to include specific numbers and recommendations for bicycling infrastructure and sidewalks? Just a thought. Whether it's 20 miles, just with
Yeah, I think
something specific.
Yeah, so one of our recommendations was, again, build more sidewalks and bike lanes. But I think what's more and what's enough, I think is, we'd have to talk about.
Okay.
I know we also talked about a goal of the end of this week. Do we need to move to approve this or anything like that? Or move to approve with edits?
I think
and
I'd probably
submit
move
by
to
the end
move
of the
with
year?
edits. Yeah, I'll get with Brent tomorrow and we'll kind of get the data together that we discussed. I think the bulk of it is here. I think with some edits, we can go ahead and, if you guys are okay with it, vote to approve, and then I will definitely send out an updated version of it before we send it out to anybody.
I move to approve with edits.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, annual report is approved. Thank you, guys. All right, Brent, did you have an update for us for our 2026 meeting schedule?
I just wanted to, I put in the, where is it here? The dates for next year. I'm working with General Services. Got some issues on some of the dates, but I'm trying to work out to make sure if we're not here, we're in room CD. But I'm trying to make sure we can, still be on, our meeting can be streamed, so
That's
working on
an
that.
important priority. Thank you.
Yes, very important. But I just wanted to give you those dates for next year.
Just to clarify, the February date is going to be the 23rd, not the 16th, right?
I thought we changed from the 23rd to the 16th.
No, the opposite. So the 16th is President's Day. We're changing it to the 23rd, which is,
Okay.
it's on our calendar correctly. It just needs to be
Okay.
updated on this.
All right.
All right, any agenda item requests for next meeting? Yes, KJ.
Hi, so it's my understanding that the position for the Bikeways and Sidewalks Manager was posted and is now closed. If we have a Bikeways and Sidewalks Manager by January, I would like to speak with them, like to get them introduced. And I would also like an update on the docked bike share RFP and where that's at in the process. That's what I got.
Thanks. Yeah, I had also requested a report on funding for sidewalks, bikeways, and greenways included in this next year's CSP, as well as a comparison with previous year's CSPs. I think Brent was working on that for me. We can hopefully get that together by January. And then I know we heard some public comments then about the pedestrian bridge. That has also definitely been on my radar as well. We did include a statement about this in our annual report saying that Metro needed to commit to keeping this bridge open at all times throughout the construction on the East Bank. We will be writing up a resolution to vote on at our next meeting in January about this as well. All right, any other new business? If not, I think we can adjourn. If we have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Wait, you have the gavel.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.
Yeah, it was on Riverside.